going to open and we just say a short Fatiha before we start, inshallah. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. والصلاة والسلام على أشرف المرسلين سيدنا ونبينا مولانا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي سبحانك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم اللهم زدنا علما وارزقنا فهما ولا تنقصنا يا أكرم الأكرمين وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين وسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين. Okay, we officially welcome our brother Josh all the way from USA. Welcome to you and welcome to everyone. Thanks for joining us. Shukran for taking your time out tonight to honor our guest. This is something that I wanted to do, and I could have done it privately, but I thought, it is something that we should share with the world, especially when, when someone has great achievements in the art of calligraphy. I think it's something to celebrate. So us down here in South Africa, we do admire you and your work. I've been following you for a long time on your Instagram or your whether it's your website or your blog or whatever. I've been peeking in and out, and your name keeps popping up. So definitely, I think what we'll do to start off. Do you want to say anything on that, Mr. Berer?
I just want to say thank you so much for thinking of me and for having me. I'm really excited to talk to you guys. It should be fun.
Yeah. Okay. So what is the time? What's your time at the moment? It should be in the afternoon, 3 o'clock or so.
Yeah. 3 in the afternoon.
Oh, it's 3 o'clock. Okay. Excellent. Okay. So I'm going to share my screen. I hope I'm got the right screen over here. Oh, sorry. Yeah, there we go.
My name is Josh Berer, and I'm a calligrapher based in Washington, D.C. I've been learning calligraphy for about 10 years now, 8 of which have been with my teacher, Muhammad Zakariyyah. When I was in high school, it was 2002, and we were in a build-up to a war in Iraq. I decided then that I didn't really trust all of the sources on the news that were telling me what Arab people thought and what Iraqi people were saying. Instead, I wanted to hear from the source in their own language, and I wanted to understand it. So I decided when I was in high school that when I got to university, I would study Arabic. And when I got there on the first day, the teacher put up a video of someone writing the alphabet in Arabic calligraphy. And I thought to myself, that's the coolest thing I've ever seen in my entire life. I want to learn how to do that. I came to calligraphy from a couple of different directions. I was a graffiti artist when I was in high school, and for me, graffiti was all about the harmony and the flow and the balance all come together to create something, a piece that is kind of greater than the sum of its parts. And when I encountered calligraphy, I realized that it was all the same concepts at play. When you're creating a piece of calligraphy, you're going for something with harmony and with balance and with a flow of letters. There's hand motions that calligraphers have to practice hundreds and hundreds, thousands of times until the hand styles become as natural as breathing. The other background that brought me to calligraphy is my family's background. My mother is a professor of Islamic art. My father is a bookbinder and an illuminator. And so when I got to study Islamic calligraphy, all of those things were very natural and felt very at home for me. When you're creating a piece of calligraphy, you should have an idea in your mind, a kind of aesthetic or a color palette or a general theme that's going to run through not just this piece, but your work in general. It should be recognizable as your own. And to do that, you have to be able to customize everything. So you have to be able to fine-tune the paints that you're using to create your illuminations. You have to be able to fine tune the colors of the paper that you're writing your calligraphy on, so it kind of maintains a cohesive look throughout the entire piece. I believe that in order to do that, you must not just be a master of one thing, you must be a master of many, many things. Once your teacher feels that you have attained a certain level of mastery, they'll give you what's called Ijazah. Now, obviously, Ijazah means permission in Arabic. In this case, it means permission to teach in the way that you were taught. What the Ijazah actually looks like is one bold line of sulus, then a couple of lines of nasakh, then another line of sulus, and that's it, that's done. Mine is 7 of those connected in a book. Usually it's just the one piece, but my teacher is, he wanted me to show him that not only could I do the calligraphy, but I was also asked to do the paper, the borders, the illuminations, the gold work, the binding, the leather embossing. The entire package has to be completed by me and no one else. One of the things that I love about the world of calligraphy and the calligraphers that call it home is that it doesn't matter what you look like, what language you speak, what country you're from, what color you are, any of that. The only thing that matters is, can you write that line? It's about this shared love of this art and a continuing drive to make your own art better and to, in so doing, enrich the entire community. One thing that I think about a lot when navigating the world of calligraphy is be in the world as though you are a stranger. And for me, that means approach things with both humility and curiosity. Learn as much as you can about this new thing, but do it in such a way that you're not imposing your own idea on it. You're listening to the source and you're trying to walk in that path. And if you're writing text that we believe is holy or divine in origin, then you must seek to produce something that rivals in beauty that divinity and that holiness.
Wow, mashallah. I think I can watch that video like 1,000 times over and over again, like looking at different aspects of, how they captured your work. It's really beautiful, mashallah. So I have a couple of questions. And just before I go ahead, I would like to also welcome, there's a couple of senior people on in the room as well. My Ustad Shahriyan Shahwaja Sirajuddin from Indonesia, who's actually currently staying in Istanbul. And I want to say something about this because the reason why I started taking note of Ustad Shahriyan Shah's work on Instagram is because of you, Josh. you told me about him. And since then, I've really admired and scrutinized, the work. And I thought, I really would love this person to be my teacher. And alhamdulillah, through the Deen Arts Foundation, I managed to take a course. And I'm not regretting it, not looking back. Really enjoying it, mashallah. So shukran to you, Josh, and to Ustad Ahlan wa Sahlan, shukran, marhaban. And also to all the other people in the group. I think Ati Mahmouda is also there. Some senior people in Arabic Calligraphy South Africa is in the group, inshallah. Yeah, Ustad Shahriyan Shah is saying, wow, brother Josh, brother Fahim, assalamu alaikum. Wa alaikum salam to everyone. Okay, so there's a couple of things that I just wanted to get through. And I mean, there's some beautiful things that you've mentioned in that video. And and I like how you mentioned how you started your story with, the things that you were hearing through the media about Islam, about Arabs, about Iraq, and about the war, and things like that. You wanted to hear it firsthand from the source. So how did you get that ball rolling? Where did it actually start?
Good question. So that was 2003. when I graduated high school. And over the next 4 years, I just tried to spend as much time as I could in the region. So I managed to spend a year in Palestine, and then 6 months in Jordan, and then in Turkey. I was in Istanbul for a summer doing a course there. And then as soon as I graduated, I moved to Yemen, and I was in Yemen for the better part of a year. And then over the next 2 or 3 years, I was bouncing around some more, back to Palestine, then back to Yemen, back to Turkey. So my early 20s was mostly spent in that part of the world, which was a blessing, because it was this kind of window of time that was just a very, very special and beautiful time in that region. Obviously, Yemen now it's heartbreaking to see what's happening. But when I was there, it was just a wonderful place.
So which part of Yemen did you specifically stay in?
I was in Sana'a, the capital, which is in the northern part. It's in the mountains. It's a very beautiful city. It looks like it's completely unique. Looks like no other city in the world. A lot of friends have spent time in Hadramaut in Tarim. There's a big school there that attracts a lot of foreigners, but I spent most of my time in the capital.
Yeah, actually, my sister.
And now one of
my sister was there at Darul Mustafa.
Yeah.
For 4 years she was there, and with her husband and the family.
Wow.
Yeah, they were actually initially they were in Syria, but anyway, when the war happened, they had to find some other place. They went over to Yemen, and then they also got caught up in some. It was a time that they couldn't, go home immediately and so on. But Alhamdulillah, they're back home now, and they're living their life and carrying on with life. So anyway, it's about you really, not about anything about us. So I think everybody wants to know more about your calligraphic, journey into Arabic calligraphy. We've seen the beautiful work that you did. Tell us about that specific work that we saw in the video. You mentioned that was your preparation for your Ijazah. So can you tell us a bit about that? Some people maybe not know what Ijazah is or what the process is. Can you maybe just take us through a basic process and how you did it with your teacher?
Sure. So the way that it's worked for quite a long time, certainly in the Ottoman system, but also in other parts of the Muslim world, is that you're taught in a certain way by your teacher, and they were taught in that same way. And when you've reached a certain point and you've completed a certain set of lessons, you're asked to complete a piece which will certify you as a master calligrapher, and we call that an Ijazah. Normally it's just a piece, like a single piece that you would put in a frame, and your teacher will sign it. Teacher or teachers will sign it along the bottom with an attestation that basically says, I am so-and-so's student, I am this person's teacher. They have the permission, I give them my permission, my Ijazah, to write their name after their work and to teach them the way that they were taught. The piece that I was working with that my teacher asked me to do is called the Alifiyya Qasidasa. So it's a poem in Arabic that is often broken up into 7 kittas, sulus nasi kittas. The version that I was working from is the version that was made famous by Mehmet Shivki Effendi, whose work we follow. He's considered kind of the benchmark standard that we should measure our own work against. He was, I believe he died in 1911. So he was kind of the last old guard of Ottoman masters. The piece ended up coming together. It's, like I said, 7 pieces. So sulus, nasi nasi, sulus. And it starts with the letter of all the letters of the Arabic alphabet. So alif, ba, ta, tha. And it's a poem in praise of the Prophet. So the piece was a lot of fun to do. It took about 6 months all told to do the calligraphy. So the process of actually making the thing was much longer than that. I wrote it with my teacher, and then I took it to Istanbul. And I stayed in Istanbul for 3 weeks, and I had it looked at by a lot of the hojas over there. Hassan Chalabi was one of them, Farhad Kurlu, my friend and teacher, Zaki al-Hashimi. Ustad Sharian saw it and gave me some.
I'm a huge fan of Ustad Zaki, a huge fan.
Wallahi, Zeki has helped me in ways that I can hardly even put into words. He is my second teacher after my Hoja, and he has helped me along and elucidated things that I literally would never have been able to understand or to know without his guidance and his help and his instruction. So it's been an unbelievable blessing to have him in my life and helping me along the way with my work. But what's interesting is in the process of that, I wrote the poem about 3 times in the course of the 3 weeks. So they would give me corrections and then I would do the corrections and then I would write it again and again. So like 3 times over. And, you know, my teacher for a long time had said, you know, there's a reason you should only have one teacher and you don't go to all the teachers of your time. Like when you're in Istanbul, you have the opportunity to see all of these major hojas, and it's a blessing and it's so much fun. As someone from outside that world, it's like, you know, it's so exciting to meet these hero figures, right? But what I learned during that time was that there's a really good reason for that guidance to only have to work with one teacher, and that was that, you know, I would show my lesson to Zeki and he would say, oh, you messed this up. When here it should come up more like this. So, okay, I'll rewrite it, do it again, do it that time according to his guidance, and then I'll take it to another teacher. And then that guy will say, oh, no, this is wrong here. You should have it more like this, like I had it in the first way. So I get this conflicting advice. And ultimately, I kind of learned by experimentation that the reason for that guidance is very practical, because people have different, the rules of calligraphy are rigid, but there's like a wiggle room, and there's some tolerance in between what's definitely wrong and what's definitely right, and somewhere in between people are going to have different interpretations. And you know, it's good to take advice from a single source and kind of walk in that particular path. So yeah, and so yeah, I wrote the poem a couple of times in Istanbul, and then I brought it back, and then I wrote it maybe another 2 times with my teacher. This was 2019. I took it to Turkey in the winter, and then by the spring, I had it basically in good shape with my teacher. And then by like June or July 2019, he was like, "This should be your Ijazah piece. We can make this your Ijazah." But you know, you have to rewrite it from scratch. I was using other people's Ahar. I was using my friend Idris from India's paper. He's, I think, one of the best paper makers around. I love his paper. But my teacher said, you know, if it's going to be your Ijazah,
we should take notes.
You got to do everything. Yeah, no, I love his work, and I often ask him for advice on how to do it, because he makes some of my favorite paper, at least. But anyway, yeah. So my teacher said, you know, dye the paper, make the ebru, do that, lay all the groundwork for it, and then, you know, rewrite it. And so by November of 2019, it was written, but none of the ebru or anything was done. And then that winter, I started making the maracas and putting it all together. And then the pandemic hit, and I stopped seeing my teacher in person, even though he's just like a couple miles away. We had to do everything via mail. So I finished the piece and I did the illumination, and then I sent it to him, and he wrote me the Ijazah bit, which is still, I'm supposed to take it to Turkey and get another circle here, hopefully from Ustad Zeki, which is called a tasdik, or a kind of confirmation. So there's going to be another page of this at the end of this book. That's going to be the signature page. So right now, that's the last page, but there's no cover on the book, because eventually it's going to get one last page and then a cover on it.
Okay.
So yeah, that's the process. Sorry. I was just going to say I have.
Yeah, continue.
Go ahead. Please.
No. I was.
Go for it.
I actually lost my train of thought now. I was just going to listen to what you were going to say. You can continue.
Oh, I was just going to continue a little bit. I have, so this book I started in 2012 when I met my teacher. And so this is the first lesson. This is Rabbi Yasser, which he wrote for me in 2012. And I just cataloged every attempt or every lesson, including all of at the beginning, I would keep all of the practice sheets and Karalamas that I would do. I stopped doing that because the book was just getting too thick. But it took 2 years to get through Rabbi Yasser with my teacher. So we see him every other week. In Turkey, you get to see them every week, but here it's every other week. So yeah, it took a long time to get through that. Say that again.
Sorry. Somebody's asking, okay, to provide details of the Idris's details of the Ahar paper at the end of the program. Okay, we'll get that from you. And then the other question was, does the 7 pages of Ijazah mean that Josh has Ijazah from 7 different masters? No, I don't think that's the. Can you just explain that to Aisha? Who asked
No. Sorry, yeah. It doesn't have to do with that. It's just the text that my teacher chose for me to write is typically broken into these 7 kittas. That's not the only way to break this particular poem down. It's been done other ways by other masters. And in fact, a friend of ours rewrote it, was just given it as like a typed document and had to come up with his own composition for it, which is a fun exercise. But I was copying Shevki's, so it's not my the pieces and how they look are not my composition. That was done more than 100 years ago, and I've just been
okay. So this is the question I wanted to ask you earlier on. So you do your own Ibru, and you do your own illumination as well, and you make your own paper, and you make your So
go ahead.
Did you actually make the paper, or did you have papers that you just put the Ahar on?
Yeah, so I do make paper from scratch, but I don't like writing on handmade paper as much. It's like everything is handmade paper these days. But the paper that I use is it's just regular white, like I think A3, A4 maybe. It's 11 by 17 in America. But it starts out like that, and then I dye it to whatever color you want it to be. And then, I put Ahar on it. So that's kind of the evolution of the paper. I'll use other papers too. I mean, Idris's stuff is all handmade paper. But when it's a piece that's just for me, it's not for a project or for a client or anything, I'll use this stuff. You get a different look when you're using commercially made dyed paper. It's a clearer paper. So, the benefit of handmade paper is you get these kind of flecks and inclusions and little bits and interesting kind of background to the paper. But with paper that starts off pure white, it's very clear. There's no.
It's just like a straightforward background color on it.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, so let me just go through. I had a lot of questions, but I'm gonna have to choose which which I would like you to answer. Okay. So what is your favorite script? Do you have any preference of scripts, and who's your favorite calligrapher? Okay, besides your teacher.
Ooh, wow, that's a tricky one. That's a good question. So for favorite scripts to look at and to read and to like appreciate is Jelly Talik. I love Jelly Talik. I think it's just such an incredibly elegant and strong, like its strength comes from its subtlety, and its beauty comes from its subtlety, and it's just such a wonderful script to look at and to appreciate. I just started learning Talik with my teacher about 4 or 5 months ago. Okay. So I'm very much a beginner at that. I've loved it forever, but I guess a close second would be the combination of Sulus and Nessie. in a composition, in a kita. I love that.
Yeah, you did it
Jelly
really well.
Salus.
I mean, yours just really looks fantastic. Can I just bring up? I'm just gonna share those pictures you sent me. Just give me a second, and then I
Sure.
can share it with everyone. Yeah, just I can just look at these pictures the whole day. MashaAllah. So
Thank
these
you.
are the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So you stick them onto a backing board, or what is it that you are actually using to stick the calligraphy papers onto?
Oh, great question. So what I'm using is, it's called a muraka, and it's basically, the idea is that if you paste your piece or any wet paste onto a free board, it's going to expand with the moisture, and then when it dries, the paper is going to contract and pull that board into a bent U shape.
Oh, I
And
see.
the only way to stop it from doing that is to make sure that it dries on something restrained. So what you do is you wrap layers of thick paper over top of a board, and the board keeps it flat. And while it's drying, it's restrained, and so it's not able to bend as it dries up. And so when you paste your calligraphy together, you do it on these thick boards. So this is a piece that's still in progress, and it's going to stay on this for the next few weeks until it's basically ready to frame.
Okay, then
and
how do you
so
remove?
doing when
How do you remove it from?
how
that
do you
board?
you slice it with a razor,
Oh,
and the first layer, the layer that's between the board, like under here, is not pasted to anything. So it's totally loose when it's actually touching the board. It's only pasted on the back. And so what you end up with is a piece that's theoretically completely flat forever. The back, I make ebru. So the first sheet that I put down is ebru, and then I do paper, 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 and then calligraphy. So then you get this kind of stiff board. And so the muraka, for something like this, you know, it's just whatever size the piece ends up being. But with this, everyone has to be the exact same size. And so I ended up kind of messing it up. Having never done a connected book before, I only realized after I had done the first two glue ups that they all had to be the exact same size, which is obvious, but yeah, I had to do some like silly workarounds to kind of make up for that. But yeah, so that's the like first step is the making the muraka, and I'll make like 5 or 6 of these at a time, and they'll just sit in the corner of the workshop until there's a piece to be put on them, because they'll take weeks to dry. If you cut them off and free them before they're ready, then as soon as they're off, you can tell that you did it too early, because it'll bend within like 2 minutes.
wow. Okay, so Shahrian Shah, what you saying? Amazing, super talented, mashallah. It's a compliment.
Thank you. I wanted to say at the beginning, by the way, I didn't have a chance, but I wanted to thank Shahrian Shah for joining us. He's been an unbelievable guide to me and friend when I go to Turkey. He's opened doors that I didn't even know existed, and you were incredibly lucky to study with him. And yeah, I think that what Dean Arts is doing, I consider it to be the great hope for the future of calligraphy in this country. And I mean, English-speaking countries all over the place. Just to be able to have access to a person and a hoja like Shahrian Shah is a blessing, and very lucky.
Yeah, it's like you know, it's like finding a diamond. So yeah, I don't want to put too much praise on Shahrian. I know he's going to be shy about it, but he's been an amazing teacher. And I mean, sometimes would sit up like 5 hours at a time teaching us. And so patient, mashallah. I haven't seen someone with that amount of patience. And I'm usually the last person in the class. And it's as if when it's my turn, I'm the last guy, I get full attention. It's not like he's sleepy or anything like that. So I don't know, you must give us your secret to start. You got some secret magic pills or something you're taking, I don't know. So yeah, let me continue. That was super interesting what you just showed us there now about sticking the calligraphy onto a board and all that things. I mean, you know, in South Africa, and this is what we're trying to do with Arabic Calligraphy in South Africa. We set up this, it's not really an organization or anything at the moment. It's just a group of passionate people who love Arabic calligraphy and want to learn more about it. So wherever we can find more information or people that can guide us further, you know, we would encourage people to take up courses, especially with Dean Arts at the moment. They, like I say, like you've said earlier on, they're bringing the teachers to, you know, to an online platform where you wouldn't be able to find that, you know, you wouldn't be able to find this closeness to the tradition. So they're trying to stick to as close as possible to the tradition as possible. And I know there's a lot of benefit to that, but it takes a lot of hard work from both sides, you know, from the organization side and also from the teacher side and the student side as well. Everybody needs to put in a lot of effort for this to make it work and to happen. So mashallah, you know, that's obviously a great input and a great service that the Dean Arts Foundation is doing to the rest of the English-speaking world, like you say. So we don't really have access to all the stuff, except for, like, you know, a few websites, maybe Script and Scribes, you know, the usual ones. And then there's the ones that we wish we knew the Turkish language for, like the kataba.org, or the other one. What's the other one's name? I can't get to it off the top of my head. But there's a few Turkish ones. Yes, that one. I mean, there is an option, obviously, to translate the stuff, you know, the Google Translate, but it just gives you some weird translations. So, I mean, obviously, you having completed an Ijazah, you're continuing with your teacher to do another Ijazah in the Taliq script. Is that your goal, to continue doing another script and another script until you complete all of them, or what is your aim?
I'd like to work on Taliq. I've always wanted to work on Taliq. The other scripts are often considered what they call Ijazahs, even though you can get Ijazah in them. I mean, I'm interested in them, but I don't have the same drive or attraction to them as much as I do to Taliq. A couple of years ago, a colleague of mine and friend, Salim Hamidi in Turkey, told me that, you know, what you got to understand about the Ijazah is it's not the end at all. It's the opposite. It's the beginning. So what I want to do now is just write pieces and get better. I don't feel like I'm a good calligrapher. I feel like, you know, I've been studying it for a while, and there's kind of this point that I feel like everyone who's serious about calligraphy ultimately realizes about it when for me, it was 2014, when I'd been studying for 2 years with my teacher, and then I went to Turkey. And you realize for the first time just how little you know, because, you know, you've been studying for 2 years. It's like, that's a good chunk of time out of your life. And it's like this whole new kind of way of seeing the world. And I was just so energized and just so passionate. And I just wanted to share with everyone that I met this like amazing art. And then you go and you realize how little you know. And it's not, you know, people say, I've gotten this way from standing on the shoulders of giants. It's the opposite. It's, you realize where you are because you're standing at the toes of giants and looking up, and you realize you're nothing. And so at that point, I was like, man, I just need to shut my mouth. I need to shut my mouth and stop talking about calligraphy and just focus on the mesh, get to a place where I'm like maybe comfortable posting pieces on Instagram. Like, let's just get to there. I don't teach students. I don't have any students. I technically could because of my Ijazah, but I don't
That was my next question.
want to take.
But now you answered that.
Yeah, I'm taking some time to learn calligraphy first. I don't feel like I have the skills to pass it on. I don't feel like a hoja at all.
Actually, you are very humble.
So my goals.
I think you've got the skill.
No, I'm realistic. I'm realistic. I see my own work, and I see the work that, you know, colleagues and friends are doing, and not just colleagues and friends, but, you know, the greats of our time. And I understand a little bit about how much what they're putting into the art, and I just want to keep learning. Like that's our only goal, right? Is like, there's no completion in calligraphy. You're never at a place where you actually, I've never met a calligrapher who says, this piece is perfect. See this piece I just did? It's a perfect. No, anyone who's been through that process knows that the first thing that you learn is that there's always a way to make it better. Your work can always get better. You can always be not just a better calligrapher, but you have a better understanding of the history of calligraphy and like the direction that we're going and the places that we want to go in. A lot of people look at my teacher's work, and especially his work in Naskh, and they say, okay, this isn't good. This isn't good calligraphy. There's mistakes in it. And what they're not understanding is that, no, he's intentionally writing in the style of other calligraphers from an earlier time, because he believes that at some point calligraphy went in a direction he didn't like, and he is a 78-year-old hoja, and he's allowed to make the choices that he makes in his own calligraphy. Having spent a career in calligraphy, he can do that. I can't do that at that point. But he makes a decision where he's going to say, I want to write like Laz Omar Wasfi or something.
You know, I spoke to somebody yesterday about this, and I said, look, there's a lot of emphasis at the moment on the, you know, the styles that Ibn Mukla came with was the 6 scripts, right? And it's kind of also changed over time. It's not anymore the same. Those 6 scripts are obviously have evolved. And if we look, you know, if we go further back, the first, if we can call it so-called script, look very different to what we are writing now. You know, how the Quran was written first in that Kufic style writing. How come people aren't putting more emphasis in studying that as well? Do you think that it's kind of lost in the world of calligraphy, or is it just for art purposes, or how do you see the Kufic fitting in all of this calligraphy learning process?
Oh, great question. What a great question. I'm glad you brought that up. So I personally believe that we live in the golden age of Islamic calligraphy. Calligraphers, I mean, we often say that like the late 19th century in Istanbul was the golden age of calligraphy, and it probably was. But I believe that we're living in another golden age, which is a different kind, in which we have the access to archives, museums, works from hundreds and hundreds of years ago that the average person in the 19th century would never see, just because there weren't public museums that they were able to access in the same capacity, and there wasn't the internet that allowed them to see these pieces. And so now you have calligraphers, a lot of people in Iran, but also all over the world, who are taking old scripts like Old Kufic and Eastern Kufic, and they're doing them again. They're writing these scripts that have been extinct for hundreds of years, and that's an amazing thing to witness in the history of calligraphy. Look at people like Jassim Miraj, who's writing Tawqi. Tawqi has basically been extinct. So few calligraphers have written Tawqi in a serious way. But people like Jassim are bringing it back and showing everyone how beautiful these scripts were. What you said about the scripts being in constant evolution is absolutely true. I've often talked about how I think of calligraphy as kind of like a sculpture that moves through time, right? Like each generation, if you look at like the differences and changes to a specific script, say Sulus, in between one generation, you'll see very, very little. You have to have a very trained eye to see the jumps and the changes that exist in one generation. But if you go back 4 or 5 generations, then it becomes incredibly obvious. And you start seeing how these scripts have been subtly changed and adjusted in each generation. Collectively, we as a movement of calligraphers have decided that this way of doing things is slightly closer to what we believe to be the truth, the real thing, the perfect beauty that is contained within each letter. Like the potential for actual divine perfection and beauty is moved a tiny bit forward in each generation, right? But that's so, like, it moves so slowly that it's imperceptible to us in the moment. You only can see it if you look back over the course of 100 or 200 or 300 years and see how the script has actually changed. In 2014, there was an amazing conference in Istanbul, and Ur Derman, who was the person who introduced me to the world of calligraphy, like originally, he took me under his wing and showed me the system and his personal collection and told me what to do if I wanted to be a calligrapher. He gave a presentation where he showed work from the time of Karahisari, a particular ayah that was carved in an inscription in Istanbul. And then the same exact ayah 300 years later, and it was completely different. And it was the same style, and it was the same ayah in the same city, but it was just ages apart because the script had evolved and changed and developed in such a way. And we're seeing that all the time. I look at calligraphers' work like Abdurrahman de Pelair, who is just pushing the boundaries of what the script can do. Wissam Shaukat is not a trained calligrapher. He is one of my favorite. You asked me who my favorite calligraphers are. Well, I have a number of favorite calligraphers, but I think Wissam and his ability to move between the traditional and the contemporary so effortlessly. He's been doing this project of forbidden ligatures, he calls them. So they're Sulus connections it's so interesting, right? Because it's these connections in Sulus that are not permitted. You're not allowed to move from this letter to that letter in that particular way. And he says, why? Why not? And so that's the kind of culture that we're dealing with right now that is pushing the world of calligraphy in so many different directions, right? Like people are just able to take the art of calligraphy in so many ways, and the community is so rich, and the world of not just the creators of the art, but the appreciators of the art and the customers of the art are, there's such a community for it, and there's such a desire for it, that there's a world in which all of these things exist simultaneously, and people are able to pursue whatever particular line of calligraphic thought that they're interested in. For example, a couple of weeks ago, there's a show here in Washington, D.C. by Sabah Harbili. If you don't know, Sabah is an Iraqi calligrapher.
I follow him on Instagram.
Yeah, so he's wonderful. He's one of my favorite artists. He won, I think, in 2013, the ACSA competition in Sulus and Nesi, kind of proving to everyone that he is mustard when it comes to proper trained calligraphy. But then if you look at his contemporary work, it's these like abstract works on canvas that use calligraphic forms, and it's so interesting, right? It's like, there's a place for that. 100 years ago, there probably wouldn't have been a place for that. People would have said, what is this person doing? But now there's, the world of art has kind of expanded its horizons and its boundaries, and we're moving this fluidity between abstract art on canvas and Islamic calligraphy, and Sabah is that bridge. That's just one of many kind of worlds in which it's possible to exist in as a calligrapher today. For my teacher and for me, we talked earlier when we had our conversation on the phone the other day, we talked about how calligraphers in South Africa and calligraphers in America or London, or people that are kind of outside the calligraphic metropole of Istanbul, or the Middle East writ large, kind of face the same challenges, right? Like we don't have a community of people who can help us with our work, do the illumination, do our Ebru, do all that stuff. If you want to make a piece that has those elements in it, you got to do it yourself. There's no other way of getting around it. For me, my tezhib is terrible because I'm not a trained tezhib artist. I don't have another lifetime to give to that art form, which is what I would need if I wanted to be as proficient an illuminator as some of the people who are working in Turkey today. Obviously, notably among them, Fatima, who's Ustad's wife. I mean, so the tezhib that I do is, I wouldn't even call it tezhib because it's not. Like tezhib has an understanding and a meaning within Turkish and Iranian culture and Arabic speaking culture also, obviously. But for me, the style of tezhib that I do is very much rooted in American design aesthetics. And part of that is because
can I show a
we
picture?
talked about how, like, yeah, sure. I have some, yeah, exactly. So that's a good example of kind of Deco or Nouveau. That design is by a Scottish designer called Charles Rennie Mackintosh. So it's not an original design of mine. It's based on a drawing by a Scottish designer from the 1920s. And partly that's because here's
another one. What's this one?
That's a Frank Lloyd Wright design. So Frank Lloyd Wright is an American architect who kind of redefined the postmodern aesthetic in American architecture in the early or the mid-century period, and kind of acted as a bridge between the world of Art Deco and the world of like contemporary architecture.
It's actually
His
really
stuff is called the
interesting
Prairie style.
how you combined your local culture with your work, with the traditional.
Right, that's basically, that's the idea, is to if anywhere there's a place for your own local design aesthetic to come through, I think it would be this area. I mean, you spoke about the idea of creating a South African style of calligraphy. I applaud that effort. I would never try to create an American style of calligraphy just because I don't know where I would start. We don't have any background or history like you guys do. So when we talk about what does American calligraphy look like, for me, it's basically, it's the aesthetic that was defined by our first major Hoja. So it's not a unique phenomenon in the history of calligraphy, in that, like, if a calligrapher comes to a place and sets up shop, his students or their students just kind of follow that aesthetic and develop it and run with it. And that's what we like. That's kind of the nature of the difference between Nastaliq and Taliq. The Turkish variant of Iranian Nastaliq was defined by students of Mir Ahmad al-Hassani, who set up shop in Istanbul. In other words, like, when that style arrived in Turkey, people made a conscious effort to follow the Hoja.
Yeah.
And it developed independently in Iran. So now they're two different styles, right? So in America, I don't necessarily see Sulus and Nessi developing independently of Turkey. But I do see, at least for me, part of what I want to do with my work is make work that looks like the Zakariyyah aesthetic, that kind of follows a general idea of what a piece comprises, and etc. So that, like, when I think about the kind of stuff that I'd like to do in the future, I would like to kind of hone that idea and do work that in its calligraphy follows the conventions of Turkey, because I believe that's like the highest level of achievement. But on the other aspects, like the tezhib and the Ebru and the stuff like that that go along with the calligraphy, that's a little bit more open to interpretation for me. And for that reason, I'm a little bit more comfortable using designs that are well outside the kind of repertoire of tezhib that you're going to see in Turkey. So this is a piece that I'm just kind of finishing up now. I have to do a few more things on it, but you can see the koltuk is like straight Art Nouveau. The rest of it, I mean, is kind of Baroque in terms of its tezhib style, but the koltuk, it's like the indented panel, means armpit. That's where I think.
Okay.
Yeah, because it's like.
So that's in
if
Turkish.
This is your nest. Say again.
That's Turkish terminology.
It is. It is. Yeah. A lot of the words that I was taught for like elements of the calligraphic equation are Turkish in origin. So like I have to work on filling in the duraks. Durak is, it means like stop sign, stop. So it's like the little pieces in, like the little stars in between.
Okay, beautiful, mashallah. So your yeah, I'm just looking at the time now, and we don't want want people to miss out the last segment of our interview. And it's been amazing. Like there's so much that you've told us, and luckily this thing is recorded. So inshallah we can go back and refer back to it. And those that missed out and maybe joined at the later part can just watch the recording. But you've got something up your sleeve. You've got something up your sleeve to show us, like some kind of demonstration. What are you going to show us? Do you want to take a minute to set up a different camera or something?
No, I was going to ask, given the fact that we talked for so long, do you want to open it up for questions?
Yeah, sure. Are there any questions? Aisha says, I love how real and authentic this interview is going. I'm enjoying it. Okay, someone's line dropped. That's Lisette. Actually, Lisette Turner is she's a wonderful calligrapher here in South Africa. She does like all kinds of calligraphy, from the obviously the general English styles. I don't know nothing about English calligraphy. Yeah, so Widad says beautiful work, Josh. So you should check out Lizette's work, Lisette Turner on Instagram. She's always posting some beautiful things. Yeah, and then so Widad says beautiful work. Oh, I've read that one already. So if there's any questions, what I'll do is like, I mean, you can continue what you wanted to show us, and then in between I will just relay the questions to you if there are any that are coming through.
Sure. I mean, I can do most of it from where I am. I'll move the camera a little bit over.
Okay, Aisha is asking how many years did it take you? I think you mentioned 8 years. Is that correct? You took
so
8?
Yeah, I've been studying with my Hoja for 8 years. I've been studying, or I've been interested in calligraphy for longer than that. But yeah, officially with my teacher about 6 years. So I guess I'm actually going to put this back where it was, and we'll talk.
Okay.
Like that. Yeah. We'll get there eventually. But yeah, so I was going to talk about what kind of goes into making a piece. And it's interesting because if you think about it, like it's two really different directions or perspectives, right? Like one is purely material, right? It's very physical. It's like, what paper how do I make the paper? How do I make the ahar? How do I do the ebru? Technically, how do I do the calligraphy? That's obviously a huge question. But then the other direction is it's totally spiritual, and it's like, it's semantic, and it has to do with meaning and ideas. And it's, what am I going to write? Calligraphy is about the transmission of information. It's not just about painting a picture or taking a photograph. It's about telling something to the world, conveying information. You have this, for me, one of the most beautiful things about calligraphy is this idea of like the veil of anonymity that you get by using other people's words to say your own message, right? Like I'm writing hadith, but I'm choosing it and I'm elevating it and I'm putting it out there. So it's hadith. So it's words that are 1400 years old, but they're also kind of my words because I'm choosing them and I'm putting them in this context and I'm showing it to the world and saying, look, this is something you should think about. These are words worth knowing and understanding and listening to. And so the first question that you have to think about is, what am I going to write? And I mean, one of the problems that we have in calligraphy is that there's so many sources in so many languages, and we don't necessarily speak them all. So
and talking about
choosing
language, Lizette's asking, she says your work is amazing. I'm in awe of your approach and your work. And did you know Arabic before you started? That's the question. And Zulfa Samodin says, grateful for this opportunity, really amazing, mashallah. Some advice for beginners on the path. So there's two questions. One, did you know Arabic? And then maybe some advice, some general advice for beginners.
Great question. So I started learning calligraphy at the same time that I was learning Arabic, but I wasn't learning with a teacher. I was just trying to copy pictures and books, so I didn't really get very far. By the time I actually started learning with a teacher, I had been studying Arabic for almost a decade. So my Arabic was all right at that point, and I was comfortable reading. I'd also been studying Persian at that point for a little while. I like Persian the most. It's my favorite. In answer to the question, some advice for beginners. Honestly, find a teacher. If you have the opportunity to study with Sharian Shah, take it. 100% take it. I like to think that, before I found a teacher, you're on a closed track from which you can never leave. So you'll just go around chasing your own tail over and over and over again without ever seeing why and how you're screwing it up. Because that's what it's all about, is learning how to see your own mistakes. That's what your teacher shows you. This is wrong because X, Y, and Z, identifiable things that can be changed and adjusted to make it better. And that stuff is just impossible to see without someone else's eyes showing you. Okay, so that, number one, find a teacher. And number two, the best advice that I have is actually get a good knife and a sharpening stone. And I'll tell you why. Because in the 8 years or so that I've been studying with my teacher, I've seen a lot of people come and go, prospective students who want to be calligraphers. And here's what happens. They're writing at home and their pen breaks. That just happens. And then they don't know how to fix it. And so they take it to their teacher. He fixes it for them. And then the same thing happens. And then they stop practicing. And then 3 months go by and they feel ashamed to show their face. And so they stop coming and they stop doing calligraphy. Some of them, so that's like learning how to cut a pen, which you got to do. Some of them will get a knife and they'll learn how to cut the pen and trim it and keep it in good shape. And that'll last until the knife gets dull. And then when the knife gets dull, then they'll be just out of luck and they won't be able to keep writing. And so I've kind of backtraced, why are all these people showing up to class and then never coming again? And it's keep your knife sharp. That's how. So that's my advice. Find a teacher and keep your knife sharp.
So I believe your teacher Muhammad Zakariyyah is a tool maker. So he makes his own knives. He makes his own everything. So did he teach you some of that skill as well?
Yeah, he did. So the best steel in the world for calligraphy pen knives comes from a city in Iran called Zanjan. And the city of Zanjan has been making knives for calligraphy for hundreds of years. That's where a lot of the knives that Hatats in Istanbul will be using are made. And I have a very dear friend here in DC who's from the city of Zanjan, and he went back home to visit his family, and he went by the metal market, and he bought me like a big stack of raw steel that's like the exact right shape for making calligraphy pens. And so it's a it's a funny story. I spent like a couple of months learning how to make knives with my teacher, and he would guide me along, and I'd bring him like the knife as it was coming into existence, and he would say, oh, you should make it a little bit thinner, or make it more in this shape, blah blah blah. I would take it home, I'd work on it, not every day, you know, from time to time, and then it was finally done, and it was ready, and I took it to him to get it treated, because you have to heat treat it, you have to heat it up and then let it cool and dip it in oil, and it's the whole process. But I took it to him when it was ready. I spent months working on it, and he broke it like that when we were heat treating it. So I haven't started making a second one because
somebody
show us the knife, it's busted.
Before you continue,
I might have. I started a second one, but yeah, unfortunately, I haven't picked up that process again. This is a knife that I use. It's the cool thing about these knives from Zanjan is that they're stamped at the bottom by the maker. I don't know if that's in focus, but this was made by Hamid. So it's not Hamid brand knives. It's Hamid made this.
Okay. So can you tell me something about this one?
So that's the Turkish style. I like that style because it gives you some good, like the hand feel is nice. I don't know about that particular one. The ones that I've seen for sale in Turkey, I haven't ever bought because they're mostly stamped, which means that they'll take the steel and then they'll just chunk a big chunk out of a big plate of steel into the shape of the knife. And then in so doing, they'll like flatten the edge. And that's how the knife is made, as opposed to grinding it on a wheel by hand, which is what the Iranians are doing.
So people are asking, what do you ask for when you buy a knife in Turkey? What's the name? Is there a specific name for a calligraphy knife, or is it just the?
Yeah, it's called kalem trash. Kalem trash. It's a Persian word, which means pen cutter.
Can you maybe spell that for us? Oh, so there's somebody saying
she's got it. She's got it.
Oh, okay. You can read it.
It's I've actually seen it as TRAS, trash. So
TRAS. Okay, but if you ask for that, you're gonna get the Iranian one. If you ask for kalam trash, is that what you're saying?
No, you'll get it. I mean, so someone asked about the Stanley knife. I'll tell you a story. The reason that I don't use those particular types of knife anymore is because we're talking about the kind that have like the snap off blade, which will work. That'll get you like 90% of the way there for cutting a knife, or for cutting a pen, I mean. But one time I was cutting a pen, it was bamboo, which is a little bit too tough for those to cut. And the blade got stuck in the wood and then snapped, and I was pushing so hard that it went right through my hands, and it cut me from here to here. I needed 7 stitches in my hand. I was in Tajikistan at the time, and it was like 10 o'clock at night. I was in this cafe. I was running through the streets, bleeding like a stuck deer. It was terrible. Anyway, long story short, I don't use the Stanley style knives anymore.
That was
because I had a bad experience. Yeah, it was terrible. But if that's what you have, that's what you can use. And plenty of calligraphers.
Are those your own fingers that you have
What's that?
On your hand? Are those your own?
Yeah,
fingers?
Exactly. But that said, a lot of top flight calligraphers in Turkey use that style of knife to cut their pen, and they are fine. It's fine. They have no problem doing it. So you have to find what works for you. One of the things, so like my Hoja is very particular in his ways. There's certain things you're just not allowed to do. For example, like I had to keep secret from him that Zeki al-Hashimi had given me a metal pen for Nessich. Had I known that, had he known that, dead. Just not allowed to use metal pens. Also, likewise, you're not allowed to cut your pen with anything other than a proper steel-bladed knife. And so that was just one of the rules that when I was studying, that was how it was.
Okay.
Yeah. So Haifa, you have a question.
What was the question? Sorry, I missed it. Let me just check. Sorry, I'm not sure where the question was.
Oh, which written piece is your favorite? Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
Geez, that's a really good question. Yeah, I saw that question come up, and I've just been kind of thinking about it at the back of my mind. What is my favorite? If I had to choose a favorite piece, oh, like a style of piece, like the Hilya. I mean, the Hilya is an amazing. I've never actually written a Hilya. I've written pieces of it, but not a finished full Hilya. I don't know if you guys ever have the opportunity to travel again in our world, but if you go to Turkey, you have to go to the Hilya Museum. It's one of the most incredible expressions of the possibility of calligraphy that I've ever seen. It's an entire museum just full of Hilyas, and every single one is different from the last. It's incredible. It's the most poignant expression of what's possible in the art of calligraphy that I've ever seen. But in terms of a specific piece, it's hard for me to think. Actually, okay. So, I mean, I'm going to go with one that's super sentimental, but so that, yeah, Hafiz in red. I love that piece. It's by a dear friend of mine, Khaled Casado in Spain, and he gave that piece to me a couple of years ago, and there's an inscription on the back talking about like our friendship, and that means a lot to me. I mean, honestly, like it's hard for me at this point to disassociate my love for the art of calligraphy itself from the calligraphers who are part of the community of people that make this art so wonderful. And so absolutely, you know, being a part of that culture is just as much of a treasure for me as it is to, you know, learn the art itself. I count that to be a huge blessing. Yeah, it's the Hilya and Tasbih Musisi. It's incredible.
Oh, yeah. Okay. I think I've seen a YouTube, just a short clip, about 4-minute clip about that museum. And it's definitely a place I want to visit, inshallah, on the top of my bucket list.
Yeah, I've got a Google Maps doc of just, it's a map of Istanbul, and I'm adding to it all the time, but there's just, it's like a list of like all the stuff to do for calligraphy nerds when you go to Istanbul, and that's on there. So if you have other suggestions of
you should have a website, calligraphynerds.com. And the place that we all need to go to.
Start that. Yeah.
Do you have that list on your website?
No, I don't. It's just something that I made for myself, and I share with friends who are going. But I can post it here. 1 second. I'll bring it up.
Okay. Thanks. Your workshop is amazing. Like what kind of stuff do you keep in your workshop? Is it mainly calligraphy related stuff, or do you do other kind of work as well besides calligraphy?
No, I just do calligraphy. I mean, my hold on 1 second. There we go. I mean, I do the other things that are kind of ancillary and alongside the calligraphy, like the Ebru, and I make ahar probably once or twice a year. I'll make enough, I'll dye a bunch of paper and then make enough ahar to last me for a year or two. Same with the Ebru. I like to do Ebru in the wintertime because the water has to be cold. So I just keep my studio super cold, and I can work on Ebru for a couple of weeks at a time and make a bunch that's going to last me for the next year or two. But I'm also sharing my space these days with my 2-year-old and 5-year-old. So there's some other, arts going on.
Do they ever like comment on your work? My 3-year-old, my son.
Oh yeah, no, we do it together.
Okay.
Yeah,
So how far
we'll do it together. We'll do my daughter wanted to start calligraphy. It's funny, when my daughter started learning how to write English, she would write it backwards because she'd sit on my lap while I was writing Arabic, and so she just thought, okay, like you just start writing this way. Yeah.
Okay. How old is she?
So Haifa, you asked what time or part of the day do I prefer to write? I like the morning and then late at night. Usually from like 12 to 6, I'm doing something else, but from like 9 to 12, and then from like 8 or 9 on, I'm working on calligraphy.
Oh, this is a question I had for you. Probably my last question, if there's no other questions. Have you participated in any exhibitions or competitions in or out of the USA?
No, I would never. No. I don't think my work is good enough to submit to either of those. Again, like that, keep your mouth shut and your head down idea is, I wouldn't submit. I mean, in the next couple of years, I would write the piece that would be submitted for a competition, because my teacher and my friends have said that it's a really worthwhile exercise, and I would send it off, but there would be no expectation that I would ever even, you mean the
Ijazah? Are you talking about the Ijazah one?
Ijazah or some of the other Turkish competitions. There's like, 4 or 5 big ones. Al Baraka is a big one. Yeah.
Yes. Do you sell?
Aisha, you asked if I sell my work. I do. Yeah, that's how I make a living.
You can go to his website. That's not his website.
The work that I do, I mean, yeah, the work that I do is it's mostly really contemporary stuff.
Al-Jannatu tahta aqdam al-ummahat, that one. Okay, this is in Persian. Is that a Persian?
That's actually an Ottoman. That's in Turkish. What does the wheel turn with if not water?
Wow, so you speak Arabic, Persian, Turkish, English. What else? What don't you do? Can you tell us what you don't do? Because
I don't speak Turkish well. That's for sure.
You make knives, you make your own paper. Yeah, you're so talented, mashallah.
Oh, before I forget, that piece is on Idris's paper. I'm gonna send to the chat his.
Shukran.
Yeah.
And this style is this a this looks like a kind of a Wissam Shaukat style? Is it, or what style is that?
That's a style. That's a pretty old piece, but that's like my kind of uninformed interpretation of Eastern Kufic. Yeah, that piece is a better, better interpretation of it, I guess.
MashaAllah, it's very beautiful, and you make your own frames as well.
Yeah.
MashaAllah.
That, by the way, if we're being honest, making frames is such a pain. It's such a pain. Professional frame makers, they have saws that cut at, they're like dialed in at exactly 45 degrees. But for me, I have to like adjust my saw to get to that. And if you're off by 1 degree in either direction, by 4 corners, it'll have multiplied to be off by 4 degrees, and it'll be just immediately obvious. So you have to like redo the entire thing. Making frames is, when it works, it's nice, but it's more often than not more frustrating than anything.
Okay, so just go to the framing company and get
Yeah,
your
just go to a
frame.
frame shop. Way easier. Yeah.
This is a picture on your website, dyeing your own paper in the workshop for original works. It looks like quite like you're making paper for. Do you sell your paper as well, or is it just for yourself?
I used to, but I don't anymore.
Okay.
Yeah, I found myself I was having to dye paper like almost every day, and it just wasn't enjoyable anymore.
Okay. Is this like a replica of a page of the Blue Quran?
Yeah, so that was actually, it's not a replica of a particular page. The client brought me a particular ayah that they were interested in seeing in the exact same style as the Blue Quran, and could I replicate it? And so that was a really fun project. That was like 2 years ago, I think. So I ended up, I kind of racked my brain for a while to figure out how I could replicate that particular style. And what I ended up doing was I wrote the calligraphy regularly, and then I wrote it again, but in PVA glue, which remains tacky after it's dried, and then gold leaf will, it's what bookbinders will use to adhere gold leaf to a piece. And so, yeah, you slap on the gold leaf and then brush it off, and it's this amazing reveal effect when the calligraphy, like you brush off all the gold and the calligraphy just stays there. It was really cool.
Wow, that one is really, it's really amazing. So the client obviously loved it.
They did, thankfully. Yeah, I was worried, but yeah, that one came out okay. That's an old piece. That's Mustafa Rakim's Rabbi Yasser composition.
MashaAllah. And
Not
this was
very
the
good.
same. This was the
Also
same.
not very good. Yeah, there was a picture of that earlier. That says Ala hadi al-ard ma yastahiq al-hayat. It's a Mahmoud Darwish quote.
It actually looks, you mentioned, I think was it in your interview, or was it on the website that I read somewhere? You mentioned that you had, prior to learning calligraphy, you were doing graffiti. And so this style of calligraphy on this picture, it looks very much like, a graffiti style. Was that you were thinking behind?
Yeah, I totally see that. Yeah. It's interesting, that style of calligraphy is popular among people who are kind of navigating that gap between like calligraphy, graffiti, and classical calligraphy. So yeah, you see a lot of stuff like that, or using those kinds of motifs in more contemporary stuff. A lot of these are old and not very fantastic.
This one is really beautiful.
Thank you.
I love how you combine the Hebrew and also use the colors that you're using within your piece. It's just like, it's just spot on the the color palette. But mashallah, I think it's we can talk for ages, but I think our time is like slowly running dry. We don't want to keep everyone too long, and it's also a bit late in South Africa at the moment. It's almost 10:30 now. But I thank you from the bottom of my heart, and I'm sure everyone on the chat has enjoyed this conversation. Are we getting to see the demo? Yeah, I'm also interested to see what you had up your sleeve for the demo. Or are you canceling it or something, or are you doing it at another point?
Well, I was just gonna kind of, less of a demo, just walk you through like the kind of A to Z of putting a piece together, but we kind of covered it. I wasn't gonna do anything super duper hands-on, so you're not missing that much. Just like I have a couple of pieces that are kind of in various states of completion. Like this one's like almost done, pretty close. This one is like, the calligraphy's on there, but there's no gold, and you can see like there's just penciled in lines where there's going to be gold.
Sure.
The tezhib is mostly done. but like, you know, there's still a few things to do. And then there's this one, which we looked at a little bit earlier, but it doesn't have a border or anything. So I'm thinking probably it's going to be.
Sorry, I just lost you there. I don't know what I did with the view. Let me. I'm looking for your name. It's just disappeared. Okay, I think I've got you now. There we go.
Got it? Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think,
So that's kind of the idea of this one. That'll be done. Yeah.
it's really beautiful. Actually,
Well,
initially when I saw that.
Jazakallah khair.
وإياكم وإياكم. Shukran.
Yep.
Shukran, brother Josh. We should definitely have another chat sometime. And
I'd love that.
Yeah, we could learn a lot from you, and we have through this little bit of time that we spent. And shukran for allowing us in your space, in your home, and opening up this window to your world and giving us some insight and background into what you're doing. Shukran very much. I think it really gives us a lot of inspiration as South Africans, as people that are not in like you say, in that in a close-knit calligraphy community. It gives us the how can I say, inspiration and confidence to work towards what you are doing in America. And we hope you all the best for your journey continuing from now, your talik that you're learning, and whatever you want to do in the future. All the best, and I'm sure you're going to make a huge success out of it, and you are probably seen as one of the great calligraphers of America already. So yeah, don't underestimate yourself. I think you do that a lot. You shoot yourself down. I don't think you should. We hope CD Josh can visit Cape Town. Okay, there you've got an invite to Cape Town. We look forward to some workshops.
Believe me, we would love to come.
We look forward to some workshops.
Thank you guys so much.
And shukran for this enlightening program. Jazakallah khair. All the best, Josh. That's from Yasmin Khan. So most of the people on this on our Arabic calligraphers of South Africa, it's obviously a national group. So from various parts. I'm in Cape Town. We have Durban. We have Johannesburg. So people from various parts of South Africa, all part of Arabic calligraphy South Africa. And then also Germany here. ACSA Shahin from Germany. I'm not sure if I'm saying your name properly, but shukran for joining us. Shukran for joining us. I really, and then Auntie Mahmouda says, thank you for this inspiring chat and love your work. And Widad says, okay, I'm not going to read that. I'm sure you can read that.
Thank you guys so much for having me and letting me talk to you guys. This has been super interesting and fun for me.
All right. Okay.
I hope there was a kernel of information that was useful.
Oh, it was much more than that. So alhamdulillah. So we've come to the end, sadly come to the end of our program tonight, inshallah. And we're definitely going to, have another program, and perhaps one day when the whole COVID situation is all blown away miraculously, then we can meet up sometime, inshallah, and see you in Cape Town. And also shukran to Shahriyan Shah Huja for joining us and sitting patiently in. Would you like to say something, Shahriyan Shah Huja?
Assalamu alaikum everyone. MashaAllah. Brother Josh, Brother Fahim, very thanks for a very good meeting today. MashaAllah, I enjoyed it. Very inspired. MashaAllah. And to everyone, I hope you have a good night. Have a good day, inshallah.
I mean, inshallah. Would you mind?
Thank you, Shahriyan Shah.
Shahriyan Shah Huja, would you mind making
when you come to Istanbul? Waiting for all of you, inshallah.
Inshallah, I can't wait to see you guys again in Istanbul next time.
Miss you. As of see your meeting now. Oh, brother Josh. we still remember you, mashallah. Very amazing pieces. I love the pieces that you have showed to us, mashallah. Mashallah. May Allah give your hands strong and strong.
Ameen.
Ameen.
Inshallah.
Thank you.
Ustad Shahriyan Shah, would you mind closing off our program with your beautiful dua, inshallah?
No, you close it. Ya Sahib al-Bayt.
You are our Ustad, so would be honored.
No. You just close, inshallah, brother.
Okay. So inshallah, we will close off now. Jazakallah khair to everyone. Josh. سبحانك اللهم بحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وبارك وسلم وسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Good night, good evening, good afternoon to you, Brother Josh. And we'll see you again.
Inshallah. Thank you so much for having me, guys. I'll talk to you soon. Bye.
Adios.